News reports have claimed that I'm anti-vaccine or any-industry. I am neither. I am pro-safety.
Did you say that COVID-19 was a genetically engineered bioweapon that targets black and white people, but spared Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people?
I didn't say it was deliberately targeted. I just quoted an NIH-funded and NIH published study. I support the measles vaccine. I support the polio vaccine. I will do nothing as HHS secretary that makes it difficult or discourages people from taking either of those
Anybody
vaccines.
who believes that ought to look at the measles book you wrote saying parents have been misled into believing that measles is a deadly disease. That's not true.
I don't want to take food away from anybody. If you like a cheeseburger, a McDonald's cheeseburger, a Diet Coke, which my boss loves, and you should be able to get them.
Word on the street is it was an uneventful day at the Senate today. Obviously, I'm kidding. Today was the first day of the Senate confirmation hearings for RFK Jr., who of course has been nominated by Donald Trump, and it was a doozy, as you can see from the compilation video. Now, since we can't discuss everything that happened in this 3.5 hour long hearing, I do think we can focus on the exchange between RFK Jr. and Senator Bernie Sanders in particular, so we can weigh in on the more important elements of this issue, of the role that RFK Jr. would be serving. And so first, let's start with a simple question from Senator Sanders about universal health care.
Do you agree with me that the United States should join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all people as a human right? Yes, no?
Senator, I can't give you a yes or no answer to that question.
Health care a human right? Is health care a human right?
In the way that free speech is a human right,
Yeah.
I would say it's different because if with free speech doesn't cost anybody anything, but in healthcare, if you smoke cigarettes for 20 years and you get cancer, you are now taking from the pool. Well, and so are you guaranteed the same right, or is there also a duty?
I'm sorry, I'd love to talk for an hour with you. We got a few minutes left here. All right, every other country on earth says healthcare, whether you're poor or rich, young or old, to human right. I'm not hearing you say that.
Now, obviously, this line of questioning is relevant considering the fact that Donald Trump has nominated RFK Jr. to be the top health official in the federal government. And it's clear that RFK Jr. is not in favor of Bernie Sanders' signature legislation, Medicare for All or universal health care. And so I gotta be honest, I'm really not surprised by that. Most people who aren't, on the progressive left tend to recoil as soon as they hear something like Medicare for All. Until you take that labeling away and just kind of describe what the legislation would do, then all of a sudden polling indicates the majority of Americans are in favor of it. But I'm curious what you think about the way RFK Jr. answered that question was, because he brought up a point that oftentimes is brought up by Republicans. Well, it wouldn't be fair because some people lead unhealthy lifestyles and that would economically hurt others who would be part of this, healthcare program. What do you think about that?
I think it just shows the contradictions that are inherent to the Maha movement and just most of these factions within both parties, honestly, because so many of them are so corporate coded. And just the idea that the government would come in and wipe out the private health insurance agencies, corporations is, it's a non-starter. At the same time, if you want to implement some of the changes that RFK wants to implement when it comes to the chemicals and food dyes and microplastics, et cetera, you have to confront some of these very same powerful interests and corporations. And so I'm not surprised that there's a fundamental inconsistency or hypocrisy to RFK's worldview when it comes to American health.
And look, to be fair to RFK, countries that do have a single payer healthcare system, similar to what Sanders wants to implement here with Medicare for all, like these are countries that don't have any smokers, right? Like these are countries where the population lives perfectly healthy lifestyles, no one's obese, no one smokes, no one engages in drug use, no one drives erratically on the road, which puts them at risk of a serious injury as a result of a car accident. You know, the people of the UK, they're perfect. None of them smoke. I don't know if you heard this, but in the UK, no one smokes. Same with Canada. I mean, come on. Come on. I mean,
Japan, have these people ever been to Asia? My goodness, nobody smokes more than those folks.
Is that true in Japan? I'm surprised by that, actually.
Oh yeah, folks are smoking out there. It's just one of those things. But I'm like the excuse making is obviously a joke, but he's been kind of signaling his anti-universal healthcare stance again, like. So much of what these guys want to do, and I don't want to get on my, my little soapbox, but I will a little bit here. It's very individualistic based. It's this idea that you by yourself will fix your health, and institutions and culture have no bearing on those outcomes. It's just about you by yourself. It's very, neoliberal. And so I'm not surprised that RFK again goes against this.
Now look, to be clear, I for the moment being have kind of put Medicare for all or a single payer healthcare system aside because I think we're so far from that. But there are other issues that are important for the role that he would serve should he get confirmed for the Health and Human Services Secretary. And so let's talk a little bit about his thoughts on pharmaceutical drug prices, because that's another issue that Senator Sanders brought up. And I was really curious to hear what RFK Jr. had to say about that. Let's take a look.
As you all know, despite the drug companies making over 100 billion in profits, paying CEOs outrageous compensation packages, we in some cases pay 10 times more for the same drug. Will you support legislation that I will introduce which says that in America we should not be paying a nickel more for prescription drugs than people around the rest of the world? Yes, no?
To equalize it?
Not to equalize it, that we should not be paying more than other countries for the same damn drug.
President Trump has asked me, in fact, I had a meeting with President Trump a week ago where we showed him the charts.
He knows the charts.
We're paying 10 times more from Europe.
That's right. And are you going to commit to us that you will end that absurdity?
I think in principle we can. We should end that disparity.
Good. Okay. That's great.
That was a good answer. That was a good answer. And look, Bernie is fired up, but he should give RFK Jr. some time to answer the question before he jumps on him. But Waz, do you believe RFK Jr. when he says that something should be done to stop pharmaceutical companies from price gouging Americans, especially relative to what other countries are paying for these drugs?
So here's the thing, folks. Like RFK Jr. is a former lawyer. You guys can tell he is he has a tough to listen to speaking voice. But in other settings, other interviews, I've watched this guy. When he's talking about his pet issues, this guy speaks with the utmost conviction, even despite his, his speech issues, right? Mm-hmm. To see him sort of hemming and hawing right there, and stammering his way through that answer, kind of gives you what you need to know right there, Anna.
Mm-hmm. All right, okay, so you're not buying it. And I don't blame you for not buying it. Honestly, look,
It's a tough sell from him.
The issue I have with RFK Jr. is he seems willing to betray his own beliefs or stances depending on what's convenient at the moment. And I think the next exchange makes that pretty clear.
A year and a half ago, you went to New Hampshire, running for president, gave a speech, and you talked about government should not tell a woman what she can do with her own body. That's her choice. Now, I think everybody on that side is pro-life. I think Everybody here is pro-choice. I have never seen any major politician flip on that issue quite as quickly as you did when Trump asked you to become HHS secretary. Tell me why you think people should have confidence in your consistency and in your word when you really made a major U-turn on an issue of that importance in such a short time.
Senator, I believe, and I've always believed, that every abortion is a tragedy.
But you told the people of New Hampshire that it was their right.
Look, this is the Bernie I love. I just do. You so rarely see any politician really fighting for anything. So I just love seeing him, fight back against the flip-flopping and the, willingness to change your views and your values based on what's politically convenient at the time. But nonetheless, I just don't trust RFK Jr. I mean, the fact that he's willing to flip-flop on something that's so fundamentally important in the health and future of women in this country. I mean, he really did damage, in my view, to himself and his reputation throughout the entirety of this hearing. I couldn't stop watching it. I was really glued to it. And I was a lot more open-minded to RFK Jr. prior to watching this hearing. And I'm curious if you had, a similar take. Maybe you were never buying anything coming from RFK Jr., but what do you think?
Look, there's like a sliver of some of the stuff that he's been hawking that I personally find to be obvious, right? As I mentioned previously, some of the chemicals like that they use in our food companies, the same freaking corporations use in our food here in America that they don't use abroad because it's banned, right? And so they're poisoning Americans, and other people abroad are protected from that. A lot of this other stuff where corporations are just taking advantage of our very lax regulatory environment in terms of the food Americans are allowed to get, and him taking the quite obvious stance against such practices where, it's sad to say, and I know we say it all the time up here, but like the Democrats, they just have nowhere to go on any of this stuff. They leave such huge openings because they are so in bed with many of these same corporations. They can't come out and say the obvious things about the cancer rates that we have here, the obesity rates that we have here, that other countries just as rich as us have none of that stuff, that it can only be because of what's being fed to us, that he comes out and he says, this obvious thing out loud. I give him props for that, but quite frankly, for me, while this guy's a phony and I don't think he should be anywhere near this office, is that he came out with a campaign and said something that, a lot of us would agree with. Both of the parties have problems. Both of them need to be burned to the ground. We can't trust either one of them. This sort of duopoly that they have on our politics is the very reason that our country is in the shape that it's in, and I'm here to be against it. Then at the drop of a dime, he just joins with Trump and the Republicans. He has no spine, he has no principles. I don't believe in this dude.
Well, we're curious what the audience thinks about this confirmation hearing. So we're asking our live audience the following question. Let's take a look. Where is it? Oh, do you think RFK Jr. will get confirmed? And sadly, I agree with the majority here. 78% argue yes, very likely that RFK Jr. will be confirmed. Only 22% say no. From what I heard today, it seemed as though every Republican senator was on board. They don't see RFK Jr. as controversial, certainly not as controversial as Pete Hegseth, who had 3 Republicans vote against him. And I think there might even be a handful of Democrats who vote to confirm him. And remember, all you need is a simple majority, 51 votes, to confirm any of Donald Trump's nominees. So I agree with the majority here. I think that it's very likely that RFK Jr. will be confirmed. And I guess let's cross our fingers and hope that he actually pursues or implements some of the good things that he was campaigning on, including going after some of the corruption in the federal government pertaining to health regulations and health regulators, regulating some of the ingredients in the food that we're consuming. He seems passionate about that. If he gets confirmed, he'll have an opportunity to actually do something about it.
If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.